Hi there. How's everybody doing? This is Sergio Sais with the Real Estate Hedgehog podcast, doing number 39. So we're moving at a nice clip. We're coming toward the end of the year now. We just got through, for those of you listening to this in the future, today is Halloween. So, I don't know about, we don't get many trick-or-treaters. And I'm here with my partner, Sam. Sam, do you guys get many trick-or-treaters up in your neighborhood?
Well, I wouldn't know because I've got kids, so I'm going out trick-or-treating.
Oh, excellent. You go, I don't care what happens around my neighborhood. I'm going to go where the candy is at.
Yeah.
No, that's excellent. So, yes, so this is number 39. It is the end of October. Starting, so we're in the middle of the fourth quarter of this year. It's going to go real fast between now and December 31st. But Sam, how are you doing? What's been happening with you, buddy?
Same old stuff, just hanging out with the family, keeping an eye on the trends, that in a couple of days, the Fed's going to meet and all indicators say it's going to be a pretty big rate hike.
What are you thinking? What have you been hearing that they're going to do?
I think everything points to another 75 basis points for November, and then they got one more in December before the year closes.
Yeah, I think December will be, I agree with you. It'll be 75 basis points. That's where I would put my money on this one. But I keep hearing from a lot of different people that I listen to that there's a possibility, a strong possibility that December might be 50 basis points because they're gonna increase anyways, right?
Well, I guess that all depends on the data that they see as a reaction to what they did. So depending on the data, if consumer demand is still high, and I think that they need to be more aggressive.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that they need to stamp down that inflation, and that's what this is all about. And we were talking earlier, like all this, the reason there's still so much demand out there is because there's still a lot of money. And yes, I know that there are people that are hurting right now because paying inflated prices is no fun. But over the overall economy, there's still a lot of money out there. So that demand is still out there, and it's going to take a little bit more to push it down.
But you know what? I think what it's done directly for guys like us is those increases have a direct impact to mortgage rates. And that's causing the demand to change based on the current market trends in the housing market.
Definitely. And they will be changing. It'll be interesting to see when we do our podcast, let's say April, May, June of this coming year, where the market will be. And I'm thinking that it probably will take that bend, and but we'll see what happens.
I think it took it already. I'm seeing a downward slide in prices. More places than there are less places. Some places maybe a few percent, some places 5-10% in the last 60 days. Obviously, the prices of homes are still high year to year, comparatively speaking, but they're definitely off of their peak highs.
Well, I will agree because I know that almost all the properties that I own, when you check what the market is for those particular markets, they are coming down. They're down 2 and 3%, and which is fine. Again, this is just part of the cycle, just part of the normal ups and downs of real estate. And so long as you're holding on to the properties and you've got renters paying your mortgage and hopefully putting a few dollars in your pocket, that's just part of the business cycle. Today, speaking of all of this and making money, I wanted to have a small discussion on selling properties. Okay, so a big part of what you and I talk about and the information we put out to our audience is how to go about buying a property, right? But what about those audience members that already have a property and now need to sell or want to sell? Because part of building wealth is holding onto a property to a certain point in time where you want to be able to sell it, and whether you pocket that money, if that's what you want to do, or you take that money to allocate it to maybe a bigger property or maybe more properties. So I wanted to talk a little bit about selling and what goes into selling and what are some of the challenges that sellers are meeting in today's market. I know you've sold several properties over the last year and a half or two.
Yeah.
So if you were to give advice to someone who was going to sell a property for the very first time, they've not done this before, and they either want to or maybe even need to sell that property, what would be one piece of advice, first of all?
Yeah, I think for a first timer, my best advice would be to take heed of the real estate agent.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
A good real estate agent will try their best to market your property at the trend, based on the current trends, to get it sold, because they don't make money until it's sold.
Right.
However, many sellers oftentimes are, kind of like engulfed in this hysteria of high prices and what they saw. So they believe, or they go on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, and they see a certain number pop up. And in their mind, they truly believe their house is worth that number. The reality is this, and this is from experience. I've sold a lot of homes as a seller myself. Your house is only worth as much as someone is willing to pay for it. No magical number generated by some algorithm on Zillow.com means anything in reality. Right. And you also have to stay up with the cost of money, because right now the cost of money is rising so fast. You have to understand that your buyers are losing their affordability, so they can't pay for it. And then the last piece of advice is, how fast do you want to sell it? You got to get ahead of the curve. If it's a downward curve and all indicators tell you that, oh, recent prices are at, let's say, $100,000 being sold, well, knowing that these things occurred 30 to 60 days ago and it just closed, those were the transactions that were negotiated a month or two ago, then maybe you need to kind of get ahead and say, okay, well, we know it's going down, and all indicators say that the comps are $100,000. Why don't I just drop it 10% below that and list it so I can get mine sold, rather than try to compete with everybody as well?
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right about how prices have been coming up. So you have to be aware of where the market is in your particular area. So I just brought up, you mentioned Zillow. So I just brought up I have a duplex in the Glendale area, and Glendale is kind of a nice town, suburb of Los Angeles, for those that don't know it. And the house is in a fairly nice area. And I remember a couple of, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, before the interest rate started going up, before that, the house was being valued according to Zillow. And, we just use that as a reference point. Not that we think that that's the true value of anything, but it's a reference point. And it was at, over $1.2 million. Okay. And even though it's Glendale, and even though it's a nice part of Glendale, it's already down to, it's down maybe to 1.1 million. So it's
about 10% almost.
Yeah, it's dropped about a little less than 10%, from 1.2 to about 1.1. And again, and that's in a nice part of town, So you can imagine that if you have other areas, maybe C areas, B minus areas, those may be even taking a little bit more of a drop. So what's interesting about this property is that we were thinking about selling it back in February, March, right?
I remember.
You remember I was telling you about that? And now, we're not going to sell it now because of different things that have happened, not even counting the increase in interest rates. So we're not going to sell the property at this point. But and that's fine. We'll wait it out, and hopefully at some point in time it'll come back up. Now, mind you, we could, even if we sold it right now, we're still going to make some really good money because we've owned this property for a long time. So
it's okay to wait it out.
Yeah.
Remember that. If you're not losing money, and that's a different story, if it's not costing you anything to hold it, consider holding it. Because in every real estate transaction, well, I don't want to use every, but 99.9% of all real estate transactions, the seller pays all the fees. The buyer's not paying anything. No. The seller pays the entire commission, either to an agent or to be split between agents. So you have to factor that in, and will you be really making that money? If you've got a $1 million piece of property and you've got $500,000 of equity in it, and you sell it, but you've got to pay, you know, $50,000 in commissions plus all these other things added to it, you know, think about it. And then not including taxes if you want to hold on to it and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So you mentioned something that was kind of interesting. You mentioned about getting ahead of the curve. So I know that what you were talking about there was the price curve. There is the prices kind of go up and down, up and down. And right now the curve tends to be going down. So for people that want, for sellers that want to sell that property, you're absolutely right. You want to actually kind of get ahead of the curve, if at all possible, if it still makes sense for you, you know, from a money point of view. Because the last thing you want to do, as you mentioned earlier, is to say, let's say on a $600,000 property, to put it right at 600,000, and then all of a sudden you're getting bids at, you know, 575, 565, 550, right? And no one's coming up to your price. So you bring it down to 575, and what's going to happen? Oh, all of a sudden the bids are going to go even below that, right?
Yeah.
So you want to get ahead of the curve by saying, okay, if my real estate agent, and I really appreciate that you said that, because real estate agents do provide a very valuable service. If they're full-time, if they're professional, they understand their market. They know what people are offering for all kinds of different properties. So if you're telling them, no, I want 600,000, and they tell you, no, put in for 565, and maybe someone will give you 575, you know, listen to what they have to say, because they understand the market. So absolutely. I mean, but the other thing you got to be careful about for sellers is for them not to get greedy. If you're going to be a seller, don't get greedy. We were talking about a property just before we came on that the sellers got a little greedy, because if they had gone with our price, that property would have sold. Why don't you talk a little bit about that property?
Oh yeah, so you remember when, if people go back a few episodes, we went out to Kansas City, Missouri to look at a property that was already under contract. We ended up walking away from that contract because it's not as advertised. But while there, we went to look at a few other properties, some that I've been kind of keeping an eye on for a while. So when we saw it, we thought, you know what, now that we've seen it in person, since we were there, it's pretty darn good. But based on number crunching and underwriting, making sure that we make money on the buy with some reserve buffers, we made an offer. And the property was going for about a little over 1.1 million, one of the properties, and we offered 900,000 in hopes that, you know, they buy it and they would counter, and then we can kind of negotiate. And we were willing to go up a little further too.
Yeah.
However, that time, which is just a few months ago, it appeared that the sellers got a little greedy because they really wanted a higher price. Well, right now that property is still on the market. No one's buying it. Interest rates are even higher. There's no way they can come close to getting that price. In fact, the offer that we gave would have been way advantageous to everybody at the time, because they would have gotten more money compared to what they can get now. And we, the buyer, would have been able to get it at a lower interest rate. It would have been a win-win for everybody. But that bit of greed is now causing the property to appear stale on the market. That's what you don't want. That's another part of selling, right? You want to have momentum. You want to have turnover. But when it sits for a while, it gives this impression to other potential buyers that, hey, something must be wrong with this. It looks good. It shows well. The numbers look kind of okay, but no one's touched this thing for 90 days, 180 days. Something's up. Something intangible is up. I'm not even going to look at it, because a lot of investors are humble enough to know that there's savvier, better, wealthy investors out there than they are, that usually grab stuff before they can get it. And if those guys passed up on it, they better be leery too. And that's just that whole mental game of buying and selling.
No, absolutely. And I do remember when we went out there, and you're absolutely right. The neighborhood was very nice. You know, I mean, I'm not going to say it was a grade neighborhood, but it was a nice middle income type of neighborhood, nice and relatively clean. And you're right. I mean, they wanted about 1.1. We offered 9. And really, our offer there was just to get the discussion going.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I think we would have gone to maybe 950, maybe 975 at the tops, right? Or something like that. I can't remember the numbers. But they just weren't budging. They did not want to come off that 1.1. And number one. Number two, the interest rates were right where everybody kind of wanted them to be. You know what? But now number three, that property's still on the market. And that was how long ago? When did we go? We went like in March or April.
Oh yeah, it was a while ago. It was months ago, I think. Now I'm looking at it. But the reality is this: we saw the trend. The trend of the interest rate, we knew that it could not go any lower. It could only go up from that point. Knowing that, a seller should recognize that buyers out there can only lose affordability, not gain affordability, because if they leverage money, they can't get any more money. So you better accept the offers. You know, what's the old saying? A bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. Right. We made the offer. We gave them our qualifications. We're ready to buy. But instead they said, well, you got to buy these other properties too.
Oh yeah.
So there was that issue too. So I mean, it's more to it. It's kind of an art versus a science. But at the end of the day, you know, like you said, a professional real estate agent who has your best interest in mind will try to get the right price that will sell.
Yes.
A real estate agent that's going to blow smoke, they're going to say, oh yeah, it's worth that. We can get that. And it'll sit there in the market for a while. And those types of agents are often the type who will list as many as they can and just cast that net. And they know that the seller will eventually drop the price anyway, but they got your deal because you've now signed a contract exclusive to them for a while. And so there's that type of predatory agent too.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when you're going to sell a property, you know, you want that property to look good. You want it to be clean. You want it to be safe, but you don't want to overspend on getting it ready for a sale.
That's a big one. Yeah.
That's a big one. And if you've been maintaining your property, you know, for the last, as long as you've had it, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever, and you've been maintaining it, keeping things fixed, repairing, you know, putting a little paint and patch on it every now and then as needed, you won't have to spend this much money. So that's something that you have to kind of be aware of, because if you overspend, that means you're going to be thinking, oh, I got to make that money back.
Yeah.
And you have to know your area. You know, I'll grant you, if you happen to own an apartment in an A area and it's an A apartment, well, guess what? You got to spend A money then, right? But if you own maybe a B, B minus, even a C property, well, then you got to kind of know how much money to put into something like that, so that it makes sense for the tenants. And again, I always say, keep them safe and keep them clean. Those are our responsibilities. That's our obligation as and as landlords. But then you want to make money, so you don't want to overspend. And I know you just recently fixed up some apartments recently where you left them nice and neat and clean, but you did not overspend, did you?
Oh, I tell you, I've gone through both, but over the years, you know, you learn and you refine. But this last one was shocking, where we were able to turn over an apartment for about $600.
Wow!
And that's everything. I was shocked by what came out of $600. I was impressed by the property manager, and it's funny because internally I had been almost thinking about maybe hiring someone else, but he's proven his worth because he did it for the demographics of the area, and we thought that it was pretty nice. So I'm happy about that. But, you know, one last word of advice, specifically for the folks who are watching this and following our newsletter. This is about real estate investment, right? So in real estate investment, oftentimes you buy and you hold and you make money. But if you're going to sell, it's for the purposes of moving forward onto the next property. So because of that, try to do your best to find that next property ahead of time, probably even lock it in place, because that will dictate the price you need to sell. Because you're focused so much on the market and where the trends are, you have overlooked what gains you could have gotten because you're trying to get that extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Sometimes you'll do much better to sell at 10, 15, 5, whatever percent less than the current market value, because it gets it off your books and you move on to something that's even bigger and better, and it'll grow your portfolio faster. So look at that next one at the same time or before, if possible, you even list your current one.
Excellent. Great advice. Great advice. So as we close up, I just want to remind people that really when you that real estate, we're talking about both sides of the real estate coin. We talk a lot about the buying, which is obviously if you haven't bought something, you don't have anything. And there are very specific things that you want to keep in mind when you're getting ready to purchase a piece of property as an investment. And then there's the selling side of it, and it's combining those two and being able to do those two things to build to grow your portfolio. That is what's going to build your wealth. So just kind of let everybody, kind of keep that in mind. And any last words, Sam?
No, that's it. As always, I hope people enjoy the content we put out. Please like, subscribe, and share it to your friends. It would be nice. And we do put out a newsletter, as always. It comes out usually every Sunday night or Monday morning. Send us an email or leave a comment below. I open up the comment section and just let us know if you want to be part of it. Send us your email. We'll put you on the list. Our direct email is realestatehedgehog@gmail.com.
Excellent. Okay, buddy. So we'll talk some more later on in the week, but we hope to see our audience again in about another week or so. Okay?
Cool. You have a good one.
Take care. Bye.